All right, welcome back. We've kind of had like almost like a little break, and I think it was a necessary break. I hope you guys had an amazing Pesach. If you caught some of the stuff that we did in between there, then you know that we were on a little break. And now we're back, and we're back in full swing, and we're in Jeremiah chapter 10. And if you can see the screen in front of you, it's a bit of AI. The actual full image is really cool. It just wouldn't fit into this particular format. And one of the things that I wanted to restructure as we begin to go into Jeremiah 10 is this idea that everything that is bad looks bad and feels bad, because that's a lot of the reason why we get caught up in things, is because they don't look or feel bad. They don't look or feel dysfunctional. Honestly, if we can be completely honest, they look and feel quite the opposite. And it's in the knowledge and understanding in what's happening and what our positioning is that we're able to see through the house of cards, the smoke and mirrors, the sleight of hand of the enemy. But when we are not knowledgeable, then we can't. So what we're going to do today, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time specifically on this learn not the way of the heathen thing. It's not necessarily an opportunity to list every single thing that the heathen or the nations, because that's the term there, are doing. Because once you know not to learn the way of the nations, you're going to be much more alert to what the nations are doing. And the overall objective, if you stay on this for like 2 minutes, the overall objective is to look at what the nations are doing and align them to what Yah says you should be doing. Not what may or may not be the thing or how it isn't. And we'll touch on that a little bit. But if you don't make it any further, when you look at anything happening around you, just like as a parent, you would tell your child, and when your friends are doing something, you need to judge that based upon how you were raised. What my requirement of you is, not what they were doing. If I didn't teach you to smoke, to drink, to fornicate, to steal, then you don't get around people who do those things and then begin to think that that's okay, because that's not your standard. That may be what their parents taught them. That may be how they were raised. That may be their upbringing. That is not your place. And so if you don't catch anything else, I want you to catch that, and I want that to sink in. All right. So there are a couple images. This one is my idea, and coupled with AI, of what this idea of Ishtar or Isis would have looked like. Remember, we're being inundated with images and things all the time. And so in this particular case, I was like, what would an ancient Canaanite goddess of fertility have looked like? And what would make a people like the Israelite women and men and others be drawn to this? Now, I could have just probably put a picture of Beyonce or something and just called it a day. But the reality is, there's an image in place during this time, and there are images and there are idols in place during this time that have both the men and women losing their whole entire Yah-given minds. And it has to be something that the women aspire to and that the men are attracted to. And this image and this idol is getting the women to behave in a way and causing the men to behave in a way and teaching the children to behave in a way. So what could get a grown Israelite priest, a grown Israelite man raised in Torah, whose family has the stories of exiting Egypt and having Yah show up in a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud and being led and being fed manna, to do something like this? What could get a grown Israelite man to bow down and offer eggs to a goddess of fertility, to have symbols and idolatry? Well, it's the behavior of idolatry in the women and what they get to benefit from, and vice versa, that causes and perpetuates this. And unfortunately, we see a lot of this in our society today. We see a lot of it. And I'm not just talking about just in society, but I'm talking about amongst the woke, amongst the Israelite, amongst the people who have these inordinate affections toward the fertility practices. And it's not just in what a woman how a woman dresses if she's your wife and what she does. No. There's something that is embedded into our psyche, and Yah is going to literally point it out in Jeremiah chapter 10. I'm also going to read to you a response from a Christian religious leader about these practices, and I'm going to show you how people tiptoe around things. But ultimately, my point at the end of this is to show you who Yah is, because that is actually the layout of Jeremiah chapter 10. Jeremiah chapter 10 is not about Easter bunnies and Christmas and cutting down trees and decking them with silver and gold. It's actually a very, very, very small part of Jeremiah chapter 10. The largest part of Jeremiah chapter 10 is literally based in, how could you do this when you have me? How could you do this when you have me? The point is, the way of the nations in comparison to the most amazing, loving, and caring husbandman, Elohim, and creator that literally the other nations covet. And you have that, yet this is your disposition. It's a heart check. So let's get right into it without any further delay, because I know we all have things we want to get back to, but also we want to meditate on this. I hope that's the goal for all of us, to get the information and then to take it and to ask Yah to increase upon what we receive. Start off at the beginning. The first part is very, very familiar to most of us. It says, "Hear ye the word which Yah speaks unto you." So it's personal to you. And you who? You all of the house of Israel. Literally, it starts off with Yah speaking to you, a covenant family. And we all know a bit about covenant, but just a little refresher. When you're being spoken to by your parent as their child, it's a different conversation than if your parent's talking to all kids or all teens or all young adults or all moms with kids. This is very, very specific, because with the specificity of the conversation comes the knowledge of what he's talking about. You already know what I'm talking about. We're in Jeremiah, mind you. They know what Yah's talking about. So Jeremiah begins like this: "Hear ye the word, hear you all, the word which Yah speaks to you." So we have to believe that the very next words that Jeremiah speaks come from Yah. And more often than not, those words come from a place where we can verify where they come from. So let's hear what Yah says. And then we're going to look at where just this particular part of what Yah says comes from. "Thus saith Yah, learn not, do not learn the way of the heathen." And in this case, the heathen is not just like, oh, heathens who you think are heathens. He's literally like the nations, the people, any people who are doing something opposite of what I have instructed you to do as my covenant people. "Learn not the way of the heathen, and do not be dismayed at the signs of heaven." Immediately people go into, oh, don't be dismayed with astrology and astronomy. But literally, Yah goes a step further. He says, look, don't learn the way of the heathen, which means too, we talked about learn, I think a couple of weeks ago. And learning is to watch, to put into practice, to watch and then put into practice, to take practical use of what they're doing and then try to duplicate it. A verse should be coming to your mind by now. "Learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them." The word dismayed means to be physically or emotionally broken or in a state of panic. It's very interesting because there might be some of you who are watching this who are like, oh, I'm just trying to watch about Jeremiah. And I have no intention at all of really diving into this like idolatry, pagan thing or anything that I'm personally doing. So I want to challenge you, if you are new or if this is something that you're just coming across, that you really, really take some time, because, hey, if it's not of any effect, then you lose nothing. But take some time to really listen to my appeal for why the ways of the nation, and I'm going to list some of them, some are going to strike a nerve for some people, but how they have the ability to put you in a physical or an emotional distress when you don't practice them. And for many of us who are probably listening, or regular listeners, we've already kind of crossed this bridge, and that's no kind of bragging point or anything. But the first time that you remove yourself from participating in a tradition, a man-made tradition, or something that may be religiously cultivated, the first time you move yourself away from participating in that, there is a physical and emotional distress, almost a breaking that comes with it. And you realize it at that moment when you decide to stop doing something, just how attached you really are to it. And for those of you who have not gotten that point, even me saying some of the things that I'm going to say, we shouldn't be attached to these things, are going to immediately put you in an emotional state or a physical state of rejection, to the point that many of you may be like, click, I'm not listening to that. That's not what that means to me. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not disobeying God. How could you say that? I love Jesus. This is my way of showing him. That's the place our minds immediately go into. And that is the idea of being dismayed. The idea of being put into a state of panic. And in most cases, people go into a state of panic and they hold on to the thing that they're attached to. But what Yah is saying is, when you see certain things, or when the nations tell you it's time for this and it's time for this, and this music comes on, and this particular festival that we've made into this that's fun for kids comes up, when that thing comes, he's like, don't be dismayed about everything that's happening. Specifically during this time, these feasts, and they're closely in alignment with how Yah does the feast in the Bible, that the Israelites and those who are in covenant still are called to practice. They're based upon the changing of the celestial bodies, the seasons, and so forth. And so when certain things would happen, or there would be certain astronomical signs, like just recently we had an eclipse. Those would be times where the nations, or the pagan nations during that time, would then go into practice to their gods. Like, hey, you got to do this on this day so that this thing can happen to you, and set this out and make sure you burn to this idol and this, because that's how you're going to. And if you don't, then you're going to be without. And you see how we're blessed. Don't you want to be blessed too? Or, hey, all of our kids are getting ready to do this. Don't you want to bring your kids out? Your kid's going to be left out. Doesn't this look fun? It's like, don't be physically or emotionally put into a state of panic when you decide to side with Yah, because siding with Yah is not going to feel good. And in the heathen way, as Yah says, they are dismayed by them. It puts them into a state of panic to do for their gods, because they link that to a practice that's attached to their God. And it's really based in their own imaginations and their own emotional attachments to those things. So Yah says, we're not going to do that. And the reason why, he says, for the customs of the people are vain. I'm going to stop there. And I'm going to deal with this. And I feel like this first part is more, it could be for all of us, but I feel like it's more for people who are probably in a space of really struggling with what their devotion to the Creator looks like and what it doesn't look like. And for those of us who may be having these conversations with friends or family or people who are close to us, and we just can't quite find the words. So over the weekend, over the past couple of weeks of sitting with this, and not just going in and attacking people's idols, because when you attack an idol, you put yourself in a place to be attacked, because people don't have things that have gone into a state of idolatry in their lives without being emotionally attached to them. And so at that moment, when you say something against something that somebody is very attached to, it becomes personal. And people don't realize that they've taken very, very silly things very, very personal. Like when you say things like bunnies don't lay eggs. And then all of a sudden people get really, really upset. Like you're like the killer of all joy for something that's really not true. And it's like, well, you keep that to yourself. Why? Because I have now made it a personal attachment. Now, if somebody told me something like that, I'd laugh, right? I'm like, I don't care about bunnies. I don't care about eggs. I'm not attached to those practices. That's not something that has an emotional attachment to me. But the emotional attachment, we have to remember, does not start when people are adults. So you look at adults, you go, how silly of you at 40 and 50 to be like making eggs with bunnies. You think that. And we poke fun at those things, but we don't realize that the emotional attachment started when their parents created a bond with them around these things. And when you snatch at people's idols, you're not just taking down a physical, statue, or you're not just taking away colored eggs. You're not just taking away bunnies with bow ties. You're not taking away old men in red delivering gifts. What you're snatching at is the core foundations of the world that made them feel safe, loved, and protected. And when you do that, you really send a person into a large and like insurmountable state of dysregulation, because attached to those things are their core values and how they identify with the people around them, and even how they identify with themselves. And for some people, if it's generational, it's how they identify with their children. It's how they identify with their grandchildren. It's how they identify with their great-grandchildren. And now it's left from being a practice that was initially founded in fertility, or a practice that was founded in European mysticism, or a practice that was founded in a very new nation, but now they have become personal. And that is the point of practice. That is the point of learning, is for learning to be transferred and to become personal. And so with that being true, when we're talking about, or if you're on the receiving end of this, the appeal to align with your creator is not an appeal to disrupt you, but an appeal to enhance and to show love. And so that's the term we're going to take as we deal with this this picture of learning not the way of the nations, not being dismayed at the heavens, and the vain customs of people. Because this is what Yah has said. And if Yah says that there are customs that are vain, even if we think he's talking to a people in a way that is so antiquated that we don't have to understand, it's our responsibility to take some time and reflect and listen, so that we don't find ourselves on the wrong side of any customs, any national practices, or any learned behaviors that would be directly offensive to our creator, to our sustainer, and to our savior. That's huge. So my appeal is based upon the love of Yah, and the love that we say we have for Yah over our children, over our parents, over our nation, over our customs, over our traditions. Most of us would profess that our love for Yah, our love for God, extends beyond our love for the things that are right in front of us, because of who our God and our Savior has been to us. I think we can all pretty much genuinely agree. When it comes to the customs, a lot of the customs of the nations, they're rooted in practices that are in direct violation of the laws of God. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. And so when we get to this learn not, Jeremiah is not coming up with something because Jeremiah is just so ticked off about Israelites and their practicing and burning incense. We've seen there's a lot of background to this, but he's basing it in what the Creator has said, literally all the way back before Israel became a nation with a physical dwelling place, before the entrance into the Promised Land. We've gone over these verses before, but for those of you who have not, we're going to go back over them. So we're going to learn first where this comes from. So we're Deuteronomy 18 and 9. I definitely recommend, as I always do, that you go ahead and you read back. You read back, you read the context. If you haven't read Deuteronomy 1-8, this is an amazing time to stop, pause, because these videos are made to be paused and taken in chunks that you can handle. Pause and go back and read, see what the context is, see if I'm just making some stuff up or if I just got some kind of like religious chip on my shoulder. Whatever it is, go back and check it out. But we're going to pick up right here at Deuteronomy 18:9. So literally, this is Yah speaking. And we talk a lot, hear a lot of people, especially people who have moved away from the literalness of scripture. And they say, well, you know, there's principles in the Old Testament. What is a principle here? There's a principle attached to any time as a created being, we're supposed to be yielded to our creator. And he puts us in a position to be blessed. We need to be in alignment and obedient to where he has us so that we can continue in that space. So for those who are like, oh, it doesn't really matter, that doesn't really pertain to me, this does. All right, so Deuteronomy 18:9 says, when thou art come into the land which Yah your Elohim gives you, you shall not, never, don't do it. Lo. The word is actually tilmad. It means you are not to ever, not even in the future, not later on, specifically not later on, right? In the imperfect, this continues on forever. You are not to learn to do. We could just stop there. But it says, after the abominations of those nations. So he gives it in a plural because there'll be a lot of nations that Israel's going to go into. It's very prophetic. No matter where you go, no matter who you're amongst, no matter if you come into the land and other people come around, you are not to learn to do the abominations of those nations. I looked at this word before, but it literally is the idea of doing the things that the Most High has already said that he hates. I abhor those things. Those things make me push you away from me. And because we profess to love and want to be in relationship with the Creator, the last thing we want to do is do things that make a person want to push themselves away from us. I'm going to put that into some relationship terms a little bit, but let's go over these next couple of verses. He said, there shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire. That's to kill your children. Anybody who uses divination, a person who is an observer of times, in order to be coupled with divination or the practices of these other nations, a person who is an enchanter, a person who is a witch, a charmer, or a person who consults the dead or familiar spirits, a wizard, or one who is a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto Yah. And because of these abhorrences, because of these things that have literally just really, really repulsed Yah, he says, I have driven them out before you. I've gotten rid of them. It says, you shall be perfect. The word there we know is to be literally in a state where you're in alignment with him. You're not in the sense perfect, but you're set apart and you're literally constantly yielding to the perfecting process with Yah your Elohim. Why? For these nations which you will possess, they hearken unto observers of times and to diviners. But as for you, Yah your Elohim says you cannot do so. Goes even further and says, if somebody, I'm going to paraphrase, I'm going to read it, comes along and they begin preaching this message that you can do these practices or you can do things because they had a revelation of how somehow Yah changed his mind, he gives some information for that as well. And he says, Yah your Elohim will rise unto thee a prophet into the midst of you. And he talks about you are going to hearken to that prophet. Now, this is not a false prophet. I'm going to give you the other one. He's going to raise up a prophet that you're going to listen to, though. These other prophets, these false prophets are going to come along, and what you're going to do to him, Yah's going to give you a list, but he's saying, because I know that there are going to be other people telling you other things, I'm going to raise up a prophet in the midst of you, and literally unto him you will hearken. according to all you desires, and according to all that you desireth of Yah, your Elohim in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice. He was like, you didn't want to hear from Yah. So he says, I'm going to raise up a prophet from among you, literally, of your brethren, like unto you, and I'm going to put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to you, and I will command him. Now remember, Moses is saying this, and it shall come to pass that whoever will not hearken to the words which he shall speak in my name, I will literally require it of him. That's going to be your life. That's going to be your life. That's important because that prophet is Hamashiach. And a lot, or people say Jesus or the Christ, that's that prophet. And a lot of people have said, oh, that prophet comes and he has a different message than this one above that says you can't do pagan things and you can't do and participate in these practices because that's just your culture. That's just the custom. That's just the way of the nations. He said, if a prophet come along and speak opposite of what I said up here, then they're not telling the truth. So he goes, verse 20, but the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, that's Yah, which I have not commanded him to speak, or shall speak in the name of other else. And I'm going to add an emphasis, and I'll teach you to do the practice of the other else, because that's why you would speak in the name of them, because you're saying, you know, it's okay to do these practices. It's not a big deal. It says, if they will speak in the name, a word in Yah's name, which I have not commanded, or will speak in the character. Speak in the character. So it's not just saying the name, it's actually teaching the character of other gods. Even that prophet shall die. And if you say in your heart, well, how are we supposed to know the word of Yah, which was not spoken? And he says, when a prophet speak in the name of Yah, if the thing follow not, meaning one, if it doesn't go along with what Yah has said, because this prophet is supposed to speak in the name of Yah, if the prophet doesn't speak according to the words of Yah that have already been given, or if they don't come to pass, meaning there's a new prophecy that's supposed to come to pass, that is the thing which Yah has not spoken, but the prophet that has spoken them presumptuously, meaning they did it intentionally to deceive you, and you're not supposed to be afraid of them, and you're supposed to continue to do exactly what Yah said. All right, another place where this shows up is Deuteronomy chapter 12 and 30. Says, take heed to yourself that you don't get caught up in following after them. These are the other nations after they have been destroyed before you, and that you do not question and ask about and inquire of, hey, why do you do that? Why do you do that to your God? Saying, how do these nations serve their gods, serve their elves? Even so will I do likewise. You're not supposed to ask and then say, oh, that's why you do Easter bunnies. Oh, that's why you do Christmas. Oh, that's why you do these customs. That too. He says, no. He said, you shall not do that unto Yah, your Elohim, for every abomination to Yah, which he hateth, have they done unto their gods. And he goes through the past, their sons and daughters passing through the fire. He says, literally, whatsoever thing I command you, what I say, do it. Simple. And he says, and you're not supposed to add to it nor diminish from it. It's important. Not supposed to add to, I'm just doing this because that's an addition. And I'm just not going to do that because that's diminishing. That's it in the simple. And literally right after this statement, Deuteronomy chapter 13 goes into the false prophet. And we need to know that in connection to the custom, there is a prophet connected to the custom. Connected to the nation, there's a prophet connected to the nation. Connected to the practices, connected to Easter, connected to Christmas, connected to eating that Yah doesn't say, there's going to be a prophet connected to it that preaches that it's okay. In the same manner, as I mentioned before, even within the house of the faithful, even amongst those who are woke, connected to the practices of plural marriage and concubines and all these things, there is a prophet and a preacher attached to it. There is a message attached to it because people don't like to practice alone. And so there are dreams and signs and wonders and things to get people on board, because with every addition and with every subtraction, there's a profit. So where does the love of Yah come into this? The love of Yah is in it because when we get away from serving Yah, we don't see it, unfortunately, as fornication and adultery. But that's how Yah perceives these practices. He literally says they're repulsive. But see, for us, we struggle, in my opinion, to understand, and we struggle to really process what our doing does to Yah, because we're like, Yah's God, he can take it. It's no big deal. That's not an issue for me. That's not an issue for him when I do things. And that's not true. Throughout Jeremiah 10, as we get through, because a lot of it'll be like a lot more reading beside this beginning portion. In Jeremiah 10, we learn that what we do grieves Yah. It makes Yah feel a way about us. And it definitely is going to cause us to be in a position to be on the wrong side of his wrath. And I don't think there's any person, whether you believe what I'm saying or not, who goes, you know what, I definitely want to be on the wrong side of the living Elohim's wrath. It's a place for me. It's just not where we want to be. So when it comes to fornication, adultery, it's something that we can all understand. So that's why I'm using these. I'm using them in conjunction with what Yah's used. And I'm going to read to you Ezekiel 22, and we're going to go in a little bit to 23. And we're going to see how Yah even explains how he feels about the idolatry and spiritual whoredom of Israel using those terms. Gives us example. He puts it into plain terms. He tells a story. He gives names. It's pretty cool. But the issue is, and it should be when our hearts are in a proper position, because that's the focus of Jeremiah, the heart, the authority within, the mind is corrupted and it's far from Yah. And so we don't think of what we're doing and how it affects our beloved, how it affects the one that we love and we say we're in communion with. So many of us who are listening to this, or and if you haven't, you probably at some point will be, unless you're called to a different call, and this is not something that you'll experience. So then you will glean your examples from other people in the text. But enough of us have been in relationships where a person has decided, or two people in a relationship have decided, we're going to be in this relationship, and this is a monogamous relationship. It's me and you. And when you're, especially early on, when you don't want to get your feelings hurt and you feel like you're catching feelings, you're like, okay, I'm catching feelings. So I need to tell you what I don't like. Like, I don't like if a guy I'm dating is talking to his exes or other females. And a guy will follow up, well, like, yeah, I don't want you talking to your exes, and I don't want you taking guys' numbers, because if you're supposed to be with me and we're working this out, I don't want you leaving your options open. Like, we're going to work it out. When we go through things, we're going to talk through them. This is how we're going to engage so that we can actually have a functional relationship without the interference of things that interfere in relationships. And so a guy might say, hey, this is cheating to me. And this cheating thing, or this thing that you're doing that will cause this additional issue, it can lead to our separation. So I don't want to cause that pain. I don't want to do that. And many of us have been in that position. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use Yah in the example. So Yah says, hey, these other nations, I tried to work with them, and they couldn't not do these particular practices. And this is what the outcome was. So because I love you and you are literally mine, I'm choosing you. You can't do this. And I know in your mind, you're going to say, that's not what it is to me. Like, if I'm on the phone with another guy, like, I'm not thinking I want to not be with you. That's my friend. And Yah's like, yeah, I get it. When you're, on the phone with Christmas and Easter, I know that you're not thinking that that's what it is. And even, you can even tell me I'm talking about you while I'm on the phone with, Christmas and Easter. I'm doing this practice because I believe this is your birth. And I believe Easter is attached to newness of life and resurrection. And, the triune God and the egg and the yolk. And I've heard a lot of things. So I'm doing this to you. This is for you. And the person's like, yeah, but I don't like that. I don't want you to do that to me, because when you do that to me, it makes me feel away, especially when you do it with somebody else. I don't like it. I don't like it. Most of us in a relationship would say, absolutely not. I love you. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. So it's easy. We put little things on our Instagram, no direct messages, female followers only. We get real creative when we try to set boundaries around a relationship that we value. So in the same way, Yah is like, can you set some boundaries around this relationship that you say that you value? But then the opposite is true. We buck back. We say, no, I've had this. It's what I've always done. You're not going to tell me what to do. You should just take it. And Yah's like, I'm not going to just take it, because I know the end result of just being on the phone, just doing the simple things leads to other things, and it disrupts it, because see, I can't be around you while you do that, and you can't have me and that. It comes to a head. It causes it to come to a head. People say, but I'm blessed and I'm good. And it's like, for now, we don't even realize what we don't have or what we're missing out on until Yah doesn't show up, or until we're covering and masking all of these grievous wounds of life with these false practices. So Yah is like, that's not going to work for me, because you see, when it comes to fornication and adultery, you may think that the law that I had back in the day is done away with, but nobody, I have yet to have a person that says, hey, your husband said, Jesus, please forgive me. And so all those women that he's sleeping with, it makes it okay. And I haven't had yet a man who says, well, my wife, every time she goes and sleeps with somebody, before she gets home, she prays and asks God to forgive her. And so she's wiped clean of that so she can come get in my bed. It doesn't matter if she tells me, because I know that moment doesn't matter anymore. And I don't care how many times, if she does it every day, if she does it every week, it's no big deal to me. It's absolutely no big deal. She can have it. She can do it, because, I know deep down in her heart, she loves me. I'm waiting for that person, because I don't think they exist. They don't. They can say they do, but there's something happening inside that's like, how can you keep saying you love me and you keep doing these things to me? That doesn't work. So that does not just stay in the Old Testament under the law. That's something that is common courtesy for an intimate relationship that's supposed to be built upon. Literally, if anything, it's elevated. It's elevated in what we call the New Testament, because Messiah says, takes this little fornication, adultery thing. He goes, I got something for you. How about this? If you even look on a woman to lust, you've sinned. Why? Because he's getting to the issue of the heart. And Jeremiah is literally getting to the issue of the heart, which is, why would you want to learn these customs? Why would you want to cause Yah grief by doing something that he literally says he doesn't like? And he literally abhors it. It makes him want to reject you, yet you keep doing that thing, expecting Yah to not at some point remove himself and allow the wrath of his indignation to take place upon you all. It's gonna happen. And so we know from Jeremiah that he says the issue is the issue of the heart. To want to treat a person a certain way and to want to do something is a heart condition. And it's not meaning to say that at some point you weren't in a bad space. And Yah's like, I get it. I know where I got you from. And a man may be saying, I get it. This may have been okay for somebody else. But what I have to offer you in an intimate relationship is going to be so much, and I'm going to give so much of myself that I need to know that you're going to be in a position to receive it, to not squander it, or to mess this up. I don't want to have my children raised this way. I was like, I don't want the future generations of Israel raised to think that this is okay. So we're going to stop it with you. And I'm going to give you rules. And as long as you stay within those boundaries, we're good. But if not, we're going to have to come back and revisit this, and hopefully at a point before I'm completely done. And so knowing this as a people and seeking intimate relationship and praying to the living Elohim, to the living God, the creator of heaven and earth, we have to be careful not to approach and pray to that God with the offenses of other gods on our lips. Thank you, God, so much for this Easter ham. Thank you, God, so much for these baskets and for these children being able to go out and learn about you from bunnies. And thank you, God, so much for supplying this tree that represents the evergreen of your salvation. And yeah, thank you. So, and you're like, whoa, that's like getting on the phone and calling your man another man's name. Or saying, you know what, thank you, husband, for allowing me to go out and sleep with that other man and to go on a date with him. And, oh, he really served me well. And I really appreciate it. And, oh, I just want to tell you how amazing this intimate moment was with him. You'd be like, a person would think you lost your mind. And unfortunately, many of us have. When we do and come to the living Elohim who has asked us, and not just asked, but begged us not to do these things and have given us a direct line to him and his blessing, yet we come and spit in his face with the pagan gods that our ancestors and those before us have learned, acting like somehow he was just kidding when he did it to the Israelites and somehow we're exempt. It used to always baffle me when people would talk about the last days. They say, oh, before all the persecution happens, we're going to be removed. That's not going to happen to us. We're not going to experience persecution. And I'm like, but people that were better than me, people that were better than me, that beheld the King of Glory face to face, tasted persecution and death, and somehow raggedy old me doesn't have to have my faith. That's weird to me. I have to go through a refinement process just like everyone else has to be tried in the refiner's fire and proven in this life whether or not they're going to serve Yah. And so how much more so then are we being proven, and proven by the practices of the nations and of their practices that are against Yah, to see if we love and if we're going to serve him. See, ours is emotionally attached. It's for us. See, it's not, we're not getting the, oh, you're getting beat and you're getting, now for those who are in war-torn areas, this may be their practice, but for many of us who live in this Western world, ours is a practice of devotion in a place of prosperity, in a place of choice, where we can choose between Yah and other things, and where we can work hard and like, oh, I can disobey Yah and I can just go get a job, and I don't care if Yah don't give to me and don't bless me, because we feel like we have those options. See, our choice and our devotion and our persecution is directly attached to choice. We have the freedom and the ability to not be in survival mode in a country where we can choose. We can waste eggs. We can dye eggs and hide them and waste and throw them away. See, we're able to choose in prosperity. And Yah talked about Israel in a 4 times in the scripture. He says, hey, Yeshurun waxed fat. It's a name he has, an affectionate name. He said, you had a lot. And so you didn't see where I wasn't. There's a verse that says, Yah, don't give me so little that I steal, and don't give me so much that I forget you. And we live in a space where we have so much that we've forgotten that Yah has required us in prosperity and in a little bit to be completely devoted to him and make choices directly toward him. See, we don't see our prosperity as a curse. when our prosperity is teaching us to choose against Yah. So it's our love that needs to be compelled in an understanding of what those things are. So Yah is going to later talk about his grief about all this, but the word that comes up, let's keep moving along. If I didn't make a heartfelt appeal at that moment, then I guess there's nothing else to be said. So he says, don't learn these ways of these people, don't be dismayed, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of a workman with an axe. They deck it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers that it move not. They are upright as palm trees, but speak not. They need to be carried because they can't go on their own. This is not the first time that Yah has said this about idols. He said it over and over again. If you read his word and you're intimate with him, you'll know how he feels about idols. They're less than nothing. They're nothing to be afraid of. He literally makes them bow before him. They mean nothing. They're a practice of vanity. He said it over and over again. Jeremiah is only echoing that same sentiment. He says, be not afraid of them. Don't be afraid of not. See, we think like, oh, afraid. No, don't think that a person can make you feel a way. Don't reverence them. Don't feel like you have to participate because you always have. He says, because they cannot do evil to you, but guess what? They are evil. Neither also is it in them to do good. They are dysfunctional. There's nothing that can come out of it. Why? Because it's a figment of your own imagination, and it's literally a creation. It's a creation of your own pagan roots, of national practices. But guess what? It's a creation of your own self-idolatry, because it goes back to how you feel and not what it feels like to the creator that keeps air in your lungs when you blatantly disobey what he said to do, because he knows the end result of those practices. So I have this thing, and it's from a guy named David Guziak, and he has really good outlines, by the way, but his commentary on this is absolute rubbish. Absolute rubbish. So we get to this thing about this, for the customs of the people are vain, for one cuts down a tree from the forest, and they decorate it with silver and gold and fasten with hammers. Check this out. Jeremiah described the pagan practice, this is his writing, custom of cutting a tree. And let me tell you why I'm reading it. Let me give you some background, because I know a person's going to Google and say, is it pagan to have a Christmas tree? Is it pagan to celebrate this? And these are the kind of answers you're going to get. And unfortunately, because we have an emotional attachment to our own self-created crap, we're going to say, I agree with that. That makes sense. Now, this don't make sense, but that makes sense. So I'm going to read you what it's going to say so we can actually read through the rubbish together. Jeremiah described the pagan custom of cutting a tree, setting it in a special place, and decorating it and worshiping it. The worship of the tree is indicated by the warning, do not, this is in bold, be afraid of them. Okay, so he says, he doesn't just say do not be afraid of them. He says, do not do them at the beginning, learn not. So he skips over that first part, but we won't let him live for a little bit. He says, in the same sense, one would give reverence to a pagan idol. Jeremiah mocked the idolatry of Judah, especially as it imitated the idolatry of surrounding nations. Okay, similar passages mock the idolatry of the heathen. They are found in Isaiah 40, 18, and 20, and 44, 9 through 20. Yet it's difficult to read this description and condemnation of an ancient pagan custom and not immediately think of the custom of the Christmas tree as practiced in the modern Christian world. Absolutely. If, based on a passage like this, a Christian would be convinced that they should not have a Christmas tree or even celebrate Christmas, then they should stand in that conviction. Okay, I'm rocking with it, right? It is good to remember what Paul wrote. Whatever is not from faith is sin. Romans 14:23. All right, David Guzik. Nevertheless, there are many reasons to believe that despite some similarities, the differences are even greater and do not prohibit the modern custom of the Christmas tree. Y'all. Jeremiah spoke regarding the customs of the Gentiles. Goyim. And in the modern world, the appropriate celebration of Christmas is an expression of the belief in God and his son, not a custom of unbelievers. I'm going to continue. Jeremiah spoke of believers borrowing customs of unbelievers. in the modern world. When a believer, check this, when an unbeliever has a Christmas tree, it is the case of unbelievers borrowing customs of believers. This is stuff y'all gonna read. If you think I'm just a whack job telling you not to do something, this is what you're gonna get. Jeremiah spoke of a tree regarded as an idol, and properly understood, the modern Christmas tree is not an idol. If for a family, it has become an idol, though, it should be discarded. At what point does something that's an idol become an idol or not become an idol? I don't know. We're going to keep reading. Jeremiah spoke to a time in history where trees were often directly connected to idolatry, either literal trees or their representation. And he just leaves it there. And he goes on to talk about how idolatry is terrible and doctrines are terrible. But it's only bad if a non-believer has a Christmas tree, because then they're taking on the practices of believers. This is the stuff that's out here, and it's a complete mind flip. We have to go with, yeah, you don't have to do all that. Guess what you can do? I'm not getting a Christmas tree. I'm not going to cut it down because I'm going to feel weird now. And I'm not going to deck myself like, dang. Deck the halls. It says deck it. Like, I'm not going to do that. And the reason why I'm saying this now is because, I didn't do something before Easter because I know people do. And I'm going to try to appeal before it happens. So hopefully you hear this and you're like, the bell has been rung. So when you get ready to silver bells, I hope that this comes to your mind. I hope that it's just similar, if not exact, but just similar enough that the appeal to do it goes, you know what? Is it really enough to be in a position where now I'm doing a practice that makes my creator feel like I am like these people right here. Check this out. We're gonna go to Ezekiel. And I thought I was gonna get further into this, but I guess we're not, because I'm not gonna keep you that long, and we're gonna pick this right back up next week. So if you're interested, tune back in. We're actually gonna we're gonna get right along here. And we're gonna get to Ezekiel. So you have Isaiah, Jeremiah. All right, so Ezekiel. And we're going to get to what Yah has said and how he gives this comparison, because see, we don't see ourselves being looked at like Yah looks at people like this, or Yah talks like this. And I think this is going to be an eye opener for some people. And I feel like this is the direction that Yah has been going this week. So we're going this direction. Ezekiel says, and the word of Yah came unto me saying, and like the same thing, Jeremiah, son of man, say unto her, thou art the land that is not cleansed. Talking about the people. Nor rained upon in the day of indignation. So after the stuff happened in Jeremiah, same stuff turns around and happens again. There is a conspiracy of her prophets in her midst thereof, like a roaring lion ravening the prey, the prophets, the preachers. They have devoured souls, and they have taken the treasure and precious things, and they have made her many widows in the midst thereof. Her priests have violated the law, her priests, her teachers, her preachers, and have profaned my holy things. Either they are lying or Yah's lying. And I told you, I'm going to err on the side of them, because I will never in this life call Yah a lie, not lying on anybody. They have put no difference, you just read what I just read, between holy and profane. Neither have they showed the difference between clean and unclean, because they teach it don't matter. And have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned among them. Her princes, that means her rulers, her sars, they're supposed to turn the heads of the people. In the midst thereof are like wolves ravening the prey, to shed blood and to destroy souls, to get dishonest gain. And her prophets have daubed them with untempered mortar, seeing vanity and divining lies unto them. Remember back in Deuteronomy? Saying, saying, this is what the false prophet is saying, thus saith Yah. The false prophet says, thus saith Yah, when Yah hath not spoken. The people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery, and have vexed the poor and needy. Yea, they have oppressed the stranger wrongfully. That's the practices of the nation. And as a person that lives in the Western world and the Western nation, absolutely, absolutely. And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. Therefore have I poured out mine indignation upon them. I have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I recompensed upon their heads, saying, saith Yah, I put on their heads what they did. So like, you know what? He's like, maybe you didn't understand it like that. So then Yah was like, you know what? Ezekiel, I got something else. Explain it like this. The word of Yah came again unto me, saying, Son of man, there were two women, it's a story, the daughters of one mother, and they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and they bruised their teats of their virginity. And the names of them were Aholah the elder and Aholibah, her sister. And they were mine, and they bare sons and daughters. Thus were their names. Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem, Aholibah. And Aholah played the harlot when she was mine. And she doted on her lovers, on the Assyrians, her neighbors, which were clothed with blue, captains and rulers of them desirable young men, horsemen riding upon horses. Thus she committed her whoredoms with them and with all of them that were the chosen men of Assyria. And with all of whom she doted, with all of her idols, she defiled herself. Neither left she her whoredoms brought from Egypt. For in her youth they lay up with her. And they bruised the breast of her virginity and poured their whoredom upon her. Wherefore I have delivered her into the hands of her lovers, into the hands of the Assyrians upon whom she doted. These discovered her nakedness, and they took her sons and daughters and slew them with the sword. And she became famous upon women, for they had executed their judgment upon her. And when her sister Aholibah, this is Jerusalem, saw this, she was more corrupt in her inordinate love than she, and in her whoredoms more than her sister in her whoredoms. She doted upon the Assyrians, her neighbors, captains, rulers, clothed most gorgeously, horsemen riding upon horses, all of them desirable young men. Then I saw that she was defiled, and that they took both one way, and that she increased her whoredoms when she saw men portrayed upon the wall, the images of Chaldeans portrayed with vermilion, girded with girdles upon their loin, and exceeding in dyed attire upon their heads, all of them princes to look to, after the manner of the Babylonians and the Chaldee, the land of their nativity. And as soon as she saw them with her eyes, she doted upon them and sent messengers unto them into Chaldea. And the Babylonians came to her into the bed of love, and they defiled her with their whoredoms, and she was polluted with them, and her mind was alienated from them. So she discovered her whoredoms and discovered her nakedness. Then my mind was alienated from her, like as my mind was alienated from her sister. Yet she multiplied her whoredoms in calling to remembrance the days of her youth, wherein she played the harlot in the land of Egypt. For she doted upon their paramours. Check this out. It's explicit. This is like, in English, it's G-rated. And in Hebrew, it's R. She doted upon their paramours, whose flesh is as the flesh of asses, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. Thus thou callest to remembrance the lewdness of your youth, and bruising your teats by the Egyptians for the paps of thy youth. Therefore, O Aholibah, thus saith Yah Elohim, behold, I will rise up thy lovers against thee, from whom your mind is alienated, and I will bring them against thee on every side. Is this not the same exact thing Jeremiah said like 2 chapters ago? The Babylonians and the Chaldeans, Pekod, Shoah, Koa, and the Assyrians with them, all of them riding upon horses. And they will come against you in chariots and wagons and wheels with an assembly of people, which shall set against the buckler and shield and the helmet round about. And I will set judgment before them, and they shall judge thee according to their judgments. And I will set my jealousy against you, and they shall deal furiously with thee, and they shall take away your nose and your ears, and the remnant shall fall by the sword. And they shall take your sons and your daughters, and your residue shall be devoured by fire. They shall also strip thee out of your clothes and take away your fair jewels. Thus I will make that your lewdness to cease from thee, and your whoredom brought from the land of Egypt, so that you shall not lift up your eyes upon them, nor remember Egypt anymore. For thus saith Yah Elohim, behold, I will deliver thee into the hand of them who you hatest, into the hand of them from whom your mind was alienated. See, he's like, remember, you hated me. And they shall deal with thee hatefully, and shall take away your labor and leave you. This is all Deuteronomy 28. In nakedness, and nakedness of your whoredom shall be discovered, both your lewdness and your whoredoms. I will do these things unto you, because you have gone a whoring after the nations, after the heathen, and because you are polluted with their idols. You have walked in the way of your sister, therefore I will give her into your hand. Thus saith Yah Elohim, thou shalt drink of your sister's cup, deep and large, and you shall be laughed to scorn and had in derision. It containeth much. You shall be full with drunkenness and sorrow, with the cup of astonishment and desolation, and the cup of your sister Samaria. You shall even drink and suck it out, and thou shalt break the sherds thereof and pluck off your own breast, for I have spoken it, saith Yah. Therefore saith Yah Elohim, because you have forgotten me and cast me behind your back, therefore bear thou also the lewdness of your whoredoms. And Yah said, furthermore, wilt thou, son of man, wilt thou judge Aholah and Aholibah? Yea, declare unto them their abominations. They have committed adultery, and their blood is on their hands with their idols. They have committed adultery, and caused their sons, who they bear to me, to pass through the fire to devour them. Moreover, this they have done unto me. They have defiled my sanctuary in the same day, and profaned my Sabbaths. For when they had slain their children to their idols, they came to me the same day into my sanctuary and profane it. Lo, thus they have done this in the midst of my house. All of this stuff is taking place with people literally believing that they're right in front of Yah, and believing that they're doing the right thing. They're doing the right thing. And so this is important, because when we look at it from the outside, but also it's from the inside. It's from the internal. All of this was happening amongst Yah's people. And I believe it's very, very important that we look at it and understand it for what it is. Understand it for what it is. It's not Yah was so mad then. And then Yah, I'm giving it to in like the religious, like Western religion, Christian version. Then Yah came and like did this like makeover thing, and he became God again, but he came God as Jesus. And then he came and he forgot everything that he used to be mad about. And like, we're now spiritual Israel, so we can just do all those things. And Yah, like Jesus doesn't care, because Jesus is God, but God doesn't remember that he was really, really mad at the people before. And so we're like brothers and sisters in faith, but we have better faith than the Jews. So then we get to just like do our thing. How can you have a story of Aholah and Aholibah, sisters, who both participate in profane practice, and then one sister got beat for it and the other one didn't get in trouble? It's not consistent. It's not consistent. And because it's not consistent, to say, you have to make two choices. And these are your choices. I have my opinions about them. Two choices. Either the whole stock of the faith that is established in the Western world, that's called Christianity, is a stock of devils, because it teaches against what Yah says, or Yah's a liar and he just changed his mind. We have to come to some really, really concrete conclusions, because there's a lot of confusion even amongst people who deny that that is the way that things should be done, and that Yah still upholds his own word. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same Yah still exists and is still holding the whole balance of creation, and has come and has been Savior and Redeemer, so that we know better than this. Not so that we then continue in the things that he spent thousands of years trying to work out of the people. And then he's just like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to come and do this, and you guys just do whatever you want. At what point as a parent, all of us who may be fleshly parents get to a point where we say, you know, it's no big deal. Just forget it. No more cleaning up, no more brushing your teeth, no more respecting me. You don't have to call me mom. You can come and go as you want. You know, you teenager, you're kicking back real much. And you know what? My resolve should be, let that teen do whatever they want. That's it. You know, I'll just take the brunt. You wreck the car, I'll just pay for it. You drunk drive, I'll just pay for it. You burn down my house, no problem. Because you know what? It's just not going to work. You don't have to respect me. Just teen your life up. Somehow Yah is supposed to just let us teen our life up and be in the state where we just forget it. And that's not it. That's not it. That's just not it. It's not going to happen. And if we can come to that conclusion as finite beings with like a blip of life like this, somehow Yah is like not worthy of saying, I'm not taking it, not today, not tomorrow, not yesterday, not next year, not with that generation. If anything, Yah is required to tighten his grip, to say, you know what, you're not going to say it was because of me. You're not going to say that that's what I told you to do. That's not it. And so for many of us, where we sit on probably the complete opposite side of a lot of things I'm saying, our minds have to shift in how we deal with people who are in this state. Because as you can see, this is deep for them. And it's a lot to process. But then at the same time, we also cannot keep going through this mental thing of like, well, maybe they think they're right. Well, maybe they got something to it. Or maybe I'm the one around here crazy. Don't be dismayed. You cannot be dismayed by what you're seeing. Cannot be. I'm going to go over this last part because he goes, neither is in them to do good. And he literally, I'm going to end right here, says, thou art great verse 6, for as much as there is none like unto thee, O Yah. He's like, all this for these false gods. Thou art great, and your name is great in might. Who would not fear thee, O King of nations? He's like, don't do the things of the nations. See, because I'm the King of the nations. And I'm telling you, as the King of the nations are not doing what I said. So who would not fear you, O King of nations? For to you does it appertain. For as much among all the wise men of the nations and in all their kingdoms, there is none like unto thee. But them altogether, they're brutish and foolish. The word here for brutish means literally like livestock and cattle. Their whole stock, their whole makeup is a doctrine of vanities. They put silver on plates from Tarshish and gold from Uphaz, and the work of the workmen and the hands of the founder, blue and purple. Remember, it talks about how the other nations are all decked out, and Yah's like, I make blue. I make purple. The gold is my gold that you took out of the womb of my earth. The hands are my hands in my likeness and my image. The silver is the silver that I put in the ground through chemical composition. Like, the plates that you eat on are made from the things that I create. He says that all the stuff literally, like, it's the work of men, just cunning men. He says, but you know what? But Yah is the true power, is the true Elohim, and he is a living Elohim. And guess what? He's not some Old Testament king. He's not some antiquated thing. He is an everlasting king. And at his wrath, the earth is going to tremble. And the nations shall not be able to abide his indignation. Thus shall you say unto them, the gods that have not made the heavens and the earth, even they shall perish from the earth. if I'm gonna make your gods perish, would you want to roll with the God that's gonna perish? He hath made the earth by his power, and he hath established the world by his wisdom. He hath stretched out the heavens by his discretion. And when he utter his voice, there is a multitude of waters in heaven, and he causes the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He makes the lightning with rain and brings forth the wind out of his treasures. He said, every man must be stupid. In his knowledge, he's dumb. Every founder is confounded by a graven image, and his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are vanity and the work of errors. And in the time of their visitation, they're going to perish. I'm going to end there. Next week, we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up with who is Jacob's portion, and why, because of who his portion is, he's already given the prerequisites, like, yo, really? You have me. We're going to get to that next week. He's going to say something about Israel having him and how silly it would be to waste time with eggs and bunnies and idols when the living Elohim of heaven and earth has chose to make his abode with man and with this nation. Why would you learn the way of the nations instead of learning the way of the living Elohim? To Yah, it makes no sense. And also, I guess at this point to us, it should make no sense too. That's all we have this week. We're going to pick it back up, dealing with who the portion of Israel is and how to avoid the doctrine of vanities. With Yah, the true Elohim, how to avoid the doctrine of vanities, how not to grieve Yah, how the way of man is not in himself, and how to call for Yah's judgment so that we will not be found in this state when we're examined. Shalom.